I'm anti-capital punishment, and that, of course, even extends to someone like Nicholas Cruz. However, I do believe, given the other circumstances and the lack of adequate mental health care coverage for people who do engage in these incredibly violent, psychopathic crimes, like Nicholas Cruz did, I do think that at this stage, permanent institutionalization is a necessity. That's it. That's all I want to talk about with respect to the shooter. Let's take a look at what the parents are saying.
Jail. I'm sorry. That is not okay. As a country, we need to stand up and say that's not okay.
It's also kind of wild that like mainstream news, is also so bloodthirsty that they will run this. What do we use the death penalty for? Traffic violations? Yeah. How about never using it? I'm really impressed that the jury chose against capital punishment. I thought that for sure they would want him killed. Yeah. Especially in a place like Florida.
I pray that animal suffers every day of his life in jail, and he should have a short life.
But don't you think taking what the victims' families want into consideration is a big thing? Rehabilitative justice factors in the victims' considerations into what kind of restitution can be offered. But of course, some families, or even a lot of them, maybe even all of them, are going to say he should be fucking murdered like he butchered our children because that's what he did. Curious, why are you against it when these cases arise? Capital punishment is unjustifiable, in my opinion. I think that state-sanctioned murder is pretty black and white. It's just unacceptable in every instance. Does not matter, especially when the adequate legal process has taken place. I consider it to be barbaric. I consider it to be unjustifiable. I understand. My heart goes out to the victims' families in this circumstance. I completely understand their rage, their justifiable frustration with the system. School shooters, pedophiles, serial killers should be subject to capital punishment. No, even then, I think permanent institutionalization is adequate in that situation. We literally we already torture. American prison system is a torturous institution. That needs to change as well. Your goal for prison is to lower the recidivism rate, lower the rate that people are likely to recommit, and to reintegrate these people into society. Okay? If that's your goal, then killing people in prison and also putting them permanently away for the most part, especially when a lot of people could be rehabilitated if given the appropriate, adequate mental health care, the adequate job opportunities, training programs and whatnot. Killing them or locking them up and throwing away the key is not the adequate response unless your goal is vengeance. And justice is not about vengeance. Justice is not about vengeance. Justice is about justice, restitution, making sure that we can coexist in this society. Having said that, the reason why you might have fucking noticed, the reason why I say there are certain people that do deserve permanent institutionalization. There are still people on this planet that we cannot fix. Okay? There are still issues. A lot of the crime, or even the violent crime, happens as a consequence of people's material conditions. And of course, material conditions play a significant role in the most psychotic bloody murderers and pedophiles and whatnot as well. However, there are still always going to be people that want to do violent things, people that demonstrate antisocial personality disorder. What you would know in, popular culture as psychopathic murderers, psychopathic killers, people that do not have, people's brain chemistry is just not adequate, not working. That doesn't mean all psychopaths are murderers. That's not the case. But there are still rare instances that our current level of medical technology and understanding of the human brain, understanding of the cognitive conditions cannot adequately take care of, cannot adequately solve. Those are the people that I believe should be permanently institutionalized. That's what I do believe. What you're talking about is literally 0.0001% of offenders, though, to be clear. There's a lot of people. There are a lot of people that do violent sex crimes. There are a lot of people that engage in actions that are completely and wholeheartedly unjustifiable. These are society-breaking acts of violence, okay? And yes, for the safety and security of everyone else, until these people have been adequately rehabilitated, some of which can be, and others that cannot, you need to keep them away. Which is why I always say, yes, prisons as a system, in the way that we understand it currently, is completely inadequate. Completely. What was your take on Ted Bundy? Not a gotcha. Ted Bundy is a great example of what I just said. Jeffrey Dahmer, another great example of what I just said. There are people that need to be kept away. These are examples, okay? These are examples of sex offenders, of repeat sex offenders, pedophiles, pedophile rapists, right? Serial killers. There are certainly people that are repeat offenders, and no amount of being in a prison and no amount amount of rehabilitation will actually help them get better. They just can't. They can't do it, okay? And those people still need to be kept away. If you can't be adequately rehabilitated, if our current medical tech does not have the innovation to deal with people like that, then you have to keep them away. That's how I feel. But this does not mean that like even people who have engaged in domestic abuse, which is a gruesome, violent, horrifying and traumatizing crime, a violent crime, should never have the opportunity to rehabilitate themselves. People who have sold drugs, people who have stolen, okay? There are plenty of people who have engaged in violent crimes that could be rehabilitated. Other societies have tried and have had plenty of successful results in rehabilitating people like this. The goal of a criminal justice system should not be to satisfy the urges of the victims. Justice system is not about vengeance. It's about making sure that you immediately stop violent people from furthering their acts of violence, and then also making sure that those violent people can then reintegrate into society. That's the goal. If that's not the goal, like in the United States of America where it's not the goal, you end up with America having 4% of the entire planet's population, but housing 25% of the entire planet's incarcerated population. We have the highest rate of prisoners per capita, and that is not an accident. That is by design, because through our immigration detention facilities and through our federal and state prison systems, we have created a permanent underclass. People that, do the license plates, people that fight fires in states like California, doing it for 25 cents to $1 an hour, because slavery was not fully abolished in this country. It was just institutionalized and codified under the 13th Amendment. Slavery is still legal in the United States of America. It is such a morally abhorrent picture that we have private for-profit prisons in this country. Think about that. That also, once again, goes back to capitalism. How does it go back to capitalism? Because you need another permanent workforce, a permanent underclass that you can always exploit. Some of these places like Angola in Louisiana, the Louisiana State Penitentiary, is a perfect example of a place that hasn't even hidden its slavery symbolism. You have a gigantic plantation in Angola, in Louisiana, where black people have life sentences picking cotton. It's a perfect example. There is a lot of work to be done in the United States of America. And oftentimes, some of the worst offenses, some of the worst state-sponsored atrocities are committed against those who are the most marginalized people. Prisoners is one of those groups that I talk about regularly.
Been living this nightmare, and it's just, there's never going to be any closure. But this really wasn't the outcome you wanted.
No, definitely not. It's been almost 5 years. We came here today, and it wasn't even a doubt in my mind that this would be the death penalty. I'm beyond disgusted of what happened, what occurred. And again, what is the death penalty for, if not for the murder and killing of 17 people?
This is an adequate question. This is a true question. Because, if there is such a thing as capital punishment, why is it not being used in this circumstance as appropriate? The state of Florida likes to use capital punishment on, mentally ill black people for the most part, just like Texas. So, yeah, abolish it.
What would you ask jurors? What would you ask them if they were right here in front of you?
What were you thinking? This isn't about your personal beliefs. It's about the heinous crime that was committed. There is no recovery. Jail is about rehabbing someone. There is no rehabbing.
Do you think there was somebody on the jury, at least one person who, from the get-go, would go for their life, no matter what the evidence showed?
Probably.
Everybody calm down. What are you doing? Dunking on a guy whose fucking daughters died in the hands of a bloody murderer? If anything, be more mad at the fucking media pointing a microphone in his face. And in his moment of weakness and anger, justifiable anger, nonetheless, he's popping off. Most people, if not all people, would feel the exact same in his shoes. It's a normal, adequate, measured, I would say, response to having your children taken away from you. When I talk about the death penalty and capital punishment being inappropriate, abhorrent, a human rights violation, I'm right, but I also am a human being who completely understands why this person feels the way that they do,
And he had antisocial personality disorder, amongst others, oppositional defiant disorder, but it doesn't give him the right to go and kill 17 children, 17 people. And I'm sorry, this is just not okay.
Do you think Cruz should have been locked up long before February 13, 2018, at least in a mental institution or something along those lines?
Locked up, yes. Mental or otherwise, I don't know what the right thing is, but he should have been locked up. He should have been in shackles every time he came into the court. He should have been in shackles the entire time he was there. He's not a human being, he's an animal.
Then a capital punishment. What about letting parents have torture sessions with the killer? Man, y'all are fucking crazy. That's not how this shit works, man. I mean, I know you're joking, but Americans, man, there's two issues in my career that I have seen where Americans, no matter what their fucking political ideologies are, get really, really fucking reactionary on. One is the prison system and dealing with criminals within the criminal justice system. You are so draconian without recognizing it. Like, your brain is wired in a way where you were like, no, every prisoner deserves the fucking, there are prisoners that just deserve fucking way worse than anything else, which is understandable. In this case, in the Parkland shooters case, I totally fucking get it. But what you don't understand is, like, it extends far beyond that. That draconian measure extends far beyond that, right? It basically turns into a tacit endorsement of the brutal conditions that American prisoners are subjected to, whether you recognize it or not. Because you might think it's adequate for Nicholas Cruz, but there are plenty more people who think it's adequate for any number of different prisoners, no matter what their crime is. So just always remember that. And the other thing is, of course, American imperialism. Mass murder getting the death penalty. Everyone in prison should get the death penalty. No, what you fail to recognize is that even when a mass murderer gets the death penalty, that means the state has that capacity. And when the state has that capacity, there are plenty of people, and there are many such cases of exonerations, disproportionately black people, by the way, black men in particular. That means that the state has that capacity, and the state will always use it. That's why all these fucking supposedly pro-life Supreme Court of the United States justices will literally take time off from their fucking legal adjudication sessions to go and fucking write letters to states to make sure that another black person is getting fucking murdered by the state. It's a precedent that the state sets, and it's I guess the tip of the iceberg that justifies a overwhelmingly awful, brutal, inhumane criminal justice system. I hope people understand what I'm trying to say here.